Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. Embrace neurodiversity, live boldly, and break through barriers. By Sari Solden, MS, and Michelle Frank, PsyD. Forward by Ellen Littman, PhD. Narrated by Marni Penning. Forward. In 1995, I was waiting in line to attend a talk at a conference organized by children and adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, CHADD. I noticed that the woman in front of me held a book titled Women with Attention Deficit Disorder. At a time when the neuropsychiatric community regularly rejected that girls were capable of being diagnosed with ADHD, let alone women, I couldn't believe my good fortune. I said to her, "Whoever wrote that book is a genius." And she replied, "I wrote it." That was my introduction to Sari Solden. Historically, ADHD described the unmanageable behaviors of hyperactive young boys. Because most females did not display these behaviors, they didn't meet the male-based criteria for diagnosis. In fact, at that very conference, a keynote speaker dismissively termed these girls and women ADD wannabes. ADHD women were living like refugees. First, they were marginalized because they didn't conform to society's gender role expectations of empathy, organization, and compliance. Second, they were marginalized because they didn't meet the criteria laid out in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Too different to measure on society's yardstick, but not different enough to be permitted the relief of a neurological explanation, women with ADHD were left to attribute their differences to their worst fears. Invalidated and misunderstood, many internalized the harshest criticisms. From our current vantage point, we can see that Solden's bold and honest words changed the landscape of ADHD forever. I do not believe it to be an overstatement to say that she unlocked the psychic prison isolating women with ADHD. We know this to be true because the response was thunderous. Women around the world felt empowered by the simple knowledge that they were not alone, and that their struggle had a name. Now, Sari Solden and co-author Michelle Frank propel the conversation forward once again. Their book encourages women to claim their space in the world and make themselves seen, heard, and known. It is both unsettling and ironic that the radical idea that this book promotes is self-acceptance. Despite the ever-changing zeitgeist, women strive to conform if they can. Women with ADHD implore clinicians to make me normal. For those with low self-esteem, an all-too-common coping mechanism is the construction of a false self. This is a devastating dynamic, in which some individuals are not afforded the empathy and validation that most enjoy. After repeated rejections, they conclude that they are not the kind valued by society. A desperate solution ensues, designing a false self that mimics neurotypicals and that may allow them to pass for normal. At first consideration, it may seem a brilliant disguise. But Solden and Frank make clear that when women with ADHD compensate for their challenges, it comes at a high emotional cost. Hypervigilant and depleted, they are still haunted by stigma and shame. When women with ADHD appear to not have any symptoms when out in the world, they may celebrate it as a success. Ironically, the result of coping well is that their plight remains secret, yet no less damaging. Rather than solicit support, they dread the inevitable crack in the facade that may expose them as an imposter. In fact, as Leonard Cohen wrote, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And so, those cracks in the facade don't need to be fixed. Those slices of light illuminate their radiant, true selves. If you are among thousands of women who have been shamed, discredited, and silenced, allow Sari Solden and Michelle Frank to be your fierce yet compassionate guides. They understand that, after decades of hiding, fears can paralyze. Your authors patiently nurture resilience and courage. They offer the opportunity to understand your role in the world by seeing it from a position of acceptance and compassion. Brimming with empathy, they offer an oasis where it is safe for women to begin the process of untangling their self-worth from their brain wiring. In this breathtakingly diverse world of ours, Solden and Frank's A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD dares to celebrate all these fascinating and unique individuals. Ellen B. Littman, Ph.D., clinical psychologist in independent practice in New York, co-author of Understanding Girls with ADHD. A note to our listeners. We are delighted to serve as your guides on this exciting journey on which you are about to embark. Here are a few important, brief clarifications of some of the terms and concepts used in this book. Enjoy the ride. Some ADHD basics, because it gets confusing. This workbook is intended for women who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and those who help them and love them. Because we can't include everything we know about ADHD, this book assumes some familiarity with most ADHD basics. To help you follow along with our discussion of certain aspects of ADHD throughout this book, however, we want to explain a few essential bits of background information, including what we mean when we talk about ADHD and its various presentations. While we most commonly use the general term ADHD in this book, at times, when important, we specify a type of presentation. Yes, they're calling it ADHD these days. There is a lot of confusion around the name and signifiers of the diagnosis of ADHD, because the diagnostic label itself has changed several times during the course of many decades. Today, the current correct diagnostic terminology is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or ADHD, which is further delineated by the diagnostic manual into 3 subtypes: predominantly inattentive presentation, predominantly hyperactive or impulsive presentation, and combined presentation. Sometimes you will hear the names ADHD and ADD used interchangeably. This is because attention deficit disorder, or ADD, was the prior diagnostic term used in the 1980 edition of the diagnostic manual, and people simply got used to the name. Though occasionally people still casually use the term ADD to indicate ADHD without hyperactivity, or the predominantly inattentive presentation, this terminology is outdated and incorrect. Predominantly inattentive presentation. People who have the predominantly inattentive presentation of ADHD present primarily with great difficulty getting going or activating to do things, even when they want or need to. Disorganization, forgetfulness, distractibility, zoning out, misperception of time, and emotional dysregulation. They don't struggle with hyperactivity and impulsivity as much as those who have other subtypes of the condition. Instead, some tend to be underactive instead of hyperactive. Predominantly hyperactive or impulsive presentation. People who have the predominantly hyperactive or impulsive presentation of ADHD struggle a great deal with hyperactivity. They, too, struggle with inattentive traits, but their main challenges are related to hyperarousal and trouble putting on the brakes. People with this subtype have difficulty sitting still, waiting in line, and holding back impulses to act and speak. They are fidgety and feel a constant need to be on the go or have an inner sense of restlessness. They also struggle with impulsivity and tend to have experienced a lot of negative consequences from uninhibited behaviors, hasty comments, and rash decision-making. Men are more likely to be diagnosed with the predominantly hyperactive or impulsive presentation. Combined presentation. People with the combined presentation of ADHD have aspects of both the inattentive and hyperactive or impulsive presentations. Women with combined presentation often describe experiences similar to those with the inattentive presentation, along with being overly talkative, prone to interrupting conversations, making impulsive decisions, and physical or mental hyperactivity. ADHD and executive functioning. What most people know about ADHD is only a small pixel of the big picture. ADHD isn't necessarily a deficit of attention so much as a problem regulating various aspects of cognition, emotion, and behavior. It also doesn't necessarily mean someone is hyper. So, what is it? ADHD is a lifelong neurobehavioral genetic syndrome that leads to structural, chemical, communication, and arousal differences in the brain that subsequently impact what is called the executive functioning system of the brain. Dr. Thomas Brown aptly describes ADHD as a complex syndrome of developmental impairments of executive function, the self-management system of the brain, a system of mostly unconscious operations. These impairments are situationally variable, chronic, and significantly interfere with functioning in many aspects of the person's daily life. The operations that Brown refers to are called executive functioning skills, which he groups into several clusters, including activation and initiation of tasks, focus and sustained attention, regulation of alertness, effort and processing speed, emotional regulation, working memory abilities, and self-regulation of behaviors. Brown provides an excellent description of these clusters and what they mean for day-to-day life with ADHD in several of his books and articles, some of which are cited at the end of this book, including A New Understanding of ADHD in Children and Adults. We hope you look over his work if you haven't already done so. It is sure to be validating and enlightening. In this book, you will hear us refer to the challenges of ADHD as often originating from a dysregulation of the executive functioning system and related skills. While an in-depth description of these terms is out of the scope of this project, we want you to understand that challenges with these management functions of the brain cause many of the struggles for women and are very descriptive of the way you may experience ADHD. What if I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, but I think I have it? If you suspect you have ADHD, it is important to meet with a professional who has some experience in diagnosing and treating the condition. There is a free checklist that screens for the presence of common symptoms of ADHD at add.org that you can complete and take with you to your first visit. A psychiatrist, physician, psychologist, clinical social worker, or therapist can diagnose ADHD. Ask potential providers if they have worked with women with ADHD, have attended any trainings or conferences on ADHD in recent years, and are familiar with ADHD as an executive functioning dysregulation. Am I doomed? Nope. ADHD is a brain-based difference that doesn't go away, but it is not a death sentence. You can and will live a happy, healthy, fulfilling life as a woman with ADHD. We promise. We've got your back, and some ideas that we think will help, so keep listening. Composite characters. The stories in this book are composite depictions of a large group of women we have known and with whom we have worked throughout the years. We share these stories in the hopes that you may find commonalities in the experiences of other women at every stage of the journey. All of the names used are fictional, and the details of any particular woman's story has been greatly altered and combined with other similar stories in order to protect confidentiality. Part 1. Braver. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Anais Nin. You probably understand what we mean when we say that having ADHD can feel like you have something wonderful inside, just waiting to bloom, if only you could break free from all of the things holding you back. You might have found yourself hiding away more and more as you've tried your very best to manage your challenges and cope with the hurt, loss, and confusion that comes with ADHD life. You may have tried time and again to fix yourself, hoping to find freedom in becoming more like someone else, someone without ADHD, only to discover that you can't get rid of the hard stuff without also getting rid of the splendor that makes you who you are, or without living behind a tiring facade. If you picked up this book, chances are you're ready to drop the old struggle and put your energy into something new and bold. Because, as you've likely found, there comes a time when sacrificing who you are, who you know yourself to be, and what you most deeply long to become, is more painful than facing the fear of opening up to be seen, heard, and known for all that you are. So stop waiting. This moment is as good as any. It is time to take the risk to blossom. So let's begin. Bravely. Chapter 1. Welcome to the Tribe. Making a World of Difference. Our book is called A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD to emphasize the simple but radical idea that instead of trying to change and fix herself, a woman with ADHD can simply learn to be herself. This guide is not radical in the sense of promoting any unusual strategies, herbs, or diets, or discarding effective, conventional treatment for the brain-based challenges of ADHD. To be clear, this book is not anti-medication or anti-strategy. This book is about ADHD. But the truth is, it's not entirely or exclusively about ADHD. It's about a great deal more. At its core, this guidebook is about helping you become and value who you truly are, challenges and all. For this reason, our approach places an emphasis on embracing brain differences and recognizing that the process of helping women with ADHD is incredibly nuanced and complex. The ways in which people with brain-based differences are pathologized and compared is similar to how others with more visible differences are judged by a gold standard of the majority. With the concept of neurodiversity, Thomas Armstrong addresses the much healthier and broader way of celebrating and understanding those with brain-based differences instead of viewing them as inferior. Instead of pretending there is hidden away in a vault somewhere a perfectly normal brain to which all other brains must be compared, we need to admit there is no standard brain, just as there is no standard flower, or standard cultural or racial group, and that in fact, diversity among brains is just as wonderfully enriching as biodiversity and the diversity among cultures and races. To help our clients with these unique brain-based challenges come to embrace their neurodiversity, we guide them through a process of untangling in which they come to terms with who they are at their core, under all those layers of shame, stigma, and confusion. We have watched the exciting process that unfolds as women with ADHD eventually break through cultural, internal, and relational barriers to move beyond surviving, to actually leading bold lives as powerful and strong women with unique brains, strengths, and challenges. Better together. You are not an alien on this planet or a stranger in this life of yours. You are part of a community of extraordinary women, kindred companions on the journey through an ADHD life that is full of more wonder and chaos than you think you can handle. You can handle it, by the way. You already are. And in this community, you will find solace in the stories of one another, We are psychotherapists in our professional lives, but we are also women on the same journey as you. Over the years, we have had the privilege and pleasure of accompanying and guiding women from all over the world on this exciting journey of discovery. Remember that you are not alone on this wild ride. It takes courage to keep going when you aren't completely sure where you are supposed to be headed. We've been there too. Uncertain as you might feel, at some point, you need to embrace your differences and difficulties and move on to your own gifts, talents, and the qualities that make you who you are. You will have to work at this. Fight for it. For women with the kinds of mysterious and invisible differences that come with ADHD, it takes a special kind of courage to keep the spark alive and to keep opening, slowly but surely, until we blossom, no longer hiding who we are. At some point, ADHD has probably impacted your ability to let yourself be known, to say what you think, or show who you are. The truth is, this journey to living boldly as a woman with ADHD isn't completely about ADHD. It is also about how you view and express your true self as a woman with invisible differences, which are challenges that other people can't see from the outside. The way you think about yourself and your ADHD challenges is deeply sculpted by the gradual and eventual internalization of repeated messages about the difference, the implied consequences of living outside the majority, neurotypical and otherwise, and how those belief systems continue to shape your internal and external experiences in the present. It's important to understand your relationship to the idea of difference, because this is exactly the world us women with ADHD inhabit, a world of difference. Redefining ADHD treatment. The complexity of ADHD treatment is this. It isn't until you are able to fully identify, accept, and respect your differences that you are truly able to fully engage in the change process. Until then, you will find yourself fighting an uphill, unwinnable battle against yourself. In the words of another psychotherapist, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I change. ADHD has consistently been shown to be a genetic, chronic, brain-based condition that involves structural, chemical, and communication differences that subsequently impact cognition, emotion, and behavior, specifically those related to what are known as the executive functions of the brain. Thomas E. Brown uses the metaphor of a symphony orchestra to describe the executive functioning system of the brain as a manager of cognitive functions. Imagine a symphony orchestra in which each musician plays his or her instrument very well. If there is no conductor to organize the orchestra and start the players together, to signal the introduction of the woodwinds or the fading out of the strings, or to convey an overall interpretation of the music to all players, the orchestra will not produce good music. Symptoms of ADHD can be compared to impairments not in the individual musicians, but in the orchestra's conductor. These management functions of the brain can affect your ability to activate yourself enough to begin a task, to sustain focus once you start the task, and to stick with it when your energy or interest wanes. And that's just for starters. For more on understanding executive functioning, we direct you to our comprehensive list of resources at the website for this book, newharbinger.com/32617. Understanding executive functioning helps us begin to see how, for women, challenges with organizing, coordinating, prioritizing, maintaining routines, managing time, and remembering details can collide with our internalized job description and play havoc with the way we feel about ourselves and our challenges. The true, radical goal of treatment. Consider for a moment how you have been thinking about your ADHD and what you have been told or come to believe about ADHD treatment goals. What if we asked you to consider a change in the way you thought about treatment for ADHD? What if a shift in how you describe your treatment goals and how you relate to yourself as a woman with ADHD was the missing key to making treatment really, truly work? Would you be willing to try that? We believe that the goal of ADHD treatment should not be to get over, fundamentally change, or otherwise contort who you are, but to move toward your hopes and dreams, to deepen your relationship with your authentic self, and to use your strengths and voice to create spaces and relationships that work for you. What if the goal of treatment is to make it easier to access more of who you truly are, not to get over who you are? We ask you to consider accepting yourself and your challenges, not to become resigned, not to be passive, but to begin a process of real and satisfying change in your life toward meaning and connection. We absolutely recommend all the effective strategies out there for addressing your ADHD challenges. We just don't want you to wait until you are perfectly organized before you let yourself have a life. Medication, therapy, coaching, and other ADHD-friendly interventions will make it much easier to be more of who you really are, not less. This is the true goal of any treatment. Strategies and organizational help should make life easier for you and calm your inner distress, but they should not be approached as a way to fix damaged goods or turn you into someone other than yourself. We know, without a doubt, that tackling the issue of shame is absolutely imperative for people with ADHD. In fact, many renowned ADHD professionals and researchers have begun to emphasize the importance of this deeper work as an essential element of ADHD treatment. This book will take you on a journey that embraces this groundbreaking evolution in ADHD treatment. Until you feel comfortable with the idea of differences, you will spend your life with ADHD pretending, placating, hiding, and feeling ashamed. It can take a long time to get to a place where you can make the shift in your ideas about ADHD, depending on your early life experiences. Just remember, it doesn't matter what medication you take or what shiny new organizational system you try. You won't get there as long as your goal is to get over who you are. What follows is the first of many reflection questions that you will encounter throughout this workbook. You may want to get a journal if you find that you need more room to write and develop your ideas. Reflection. Treatment goals. What immediately comes to mind when you think of ADHD treatment? Consider what it would look like if some of your goals included moving toward my hopes and dreams, deepening my relationship with myself, using my strengths, using my voice, creating spaces that work better for me, building mutual and satisfying relationships, finding it easier to access more of who I truly am. Only dogs and furniture need fixing. Many women with ADHD have a deeply ingrained hope that a few sessions of ADHD-oriented therapy will fix them. The sooner, the better. We live in a quick-fix culture. Sitting with the uncertainty of a slowly unfolding process is not easy for anyone, and palatable to few. The reality of the situation, however, is that you are not a problem to be solved. We offer no quick, absolute solution, because even within moments of ADHD hardships, we see opportunity, not deficit. Rest assured, it is okay to have these thoughts, fears, and questions. You don't have to view ADHD as a gift in order to move forward. It may take a while for you to feel comfortable internalizing the idea that you don't need fixing. And you may be concerned that we, the authors, are invalidating the struggles inherent in living with ADHD. We are not. We, as clinicians and women with ADHD, absolutely know the struggle. And we have found that colluding with the desire to fundamentally fix yourself.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?